we are ready. Okay, welcome everybody. This is Informatics Europe's ethics webinar. And we will start as usually by presenting Informatics Europe. We used to say that Informatics Europe is the European voice of informatic researchers and education. So let us move to the next. The history of Informatics Europe that started in 2005. And just to make this compressed and quick, I can tell that the development went through from the group of departments, heads and deans to non-profit membership association in 2006. And this year, it is a community of European leaders in informatics research and education. And you can see in this picture how many groups we have in each country, how many departments. It is all across the Europe. And this is the list of ideas we are working for or activities. The idea is to create opportunities for joint initiatives and knowledge exchange in Europe, and advocate for informatics in European policy discussions, promote quality standards and best practices, foster ethical and responsible informatics teaching and research, and nurture talent. That's very important. And this slide shows which kinds of activities we have and what we are doing. We have working groups, publications, bulletins, social media, webinars, and so on and so forth. So all of this you can find on our webpage if you want to read in detail about the activities, and if you want to join us, you are welcome. So we have short-term objectives and long-term goals, and just an example of short-term objective is to better understand the European landscape with relation to teaching practices and so on. So raise awareness about the importance of teaching ethics to students, and you can read it in the list. So this is important, and we would like to know your opinion. So if you go to the page and consult those Q, you will help us a lot in understanding what people think and how they reason about important things for us. It is possible to follow us on those links on X or Twitter, LinkedIn, on YouTube channel. And finally, we are here at our webinar of today. And the presenter is Dympna of Sullivan, and she is from TU Dublin, Ireland. And the title of the ethics seminar is HCI4AI, the European Union AI Act, and the crucial role of human-computer interaction in developing human-centric AI. Please, Dympna, the floor is yours. I will just stop sharing. So,
thank you, Gordana, for that introduction. So, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Right. So thanks very much for that, and obviously for the opportunity to speak today. And as you said, I'm going to talk a little bit at the start of this seminar really about the new legislation that's coming out, the EU AI Act, and talk about, my research is kind of at the intersection of human-computer interaction and artificial intelligence, and how can we sort of leverage methods and tools from human-computer interaction focus more on developing what we're calling in the European Union human-centric or trustworthy AI. So just before we start, just a little bit about me. I suppose I'm the academic lead of what's called the Digital Futures Research Hub at TU Dublin. And that's a research hub that tries to, explore new digital technologies with positive impacts for individuals, society, the economy, and the environment. And we're very much an interdisciplinary hub. We're trying to bring together expertise from various fields like computer science, AI, data science, social sciences, and many of the application domains. And we have many objectives there. The first is the foundational aspect. We want to focus on, research, core, I suppose, computing research in these kind of areas. The second is the application aspect. We're very interested in collaborating with industry, also with government, to understand how digitally can drive digital transformation, but to do that, in a sort of a safe and an ethical way. And then third is this human and societal impact, and that's where we're really focused, I suppose, on the computing ethics, trustworthy and human-centric AI, and developing these digital solutions with positive impact for the well-being of individuals and communities. And we're very open to collaborations. We're working obviously with Gordana and Informatics Europe on some existing projects, but we're open to collaborations with other research groups, individuals, institutions, and so on. And so I suppose just as part of this is, as I said, this is with human-centered AI junction is where my research sits. I'm interested in how humans and AI sort of intersect with each other. And in the background of all of this, or maybe more like actually the foreground of all of this, is the new legislation. I'm going to focus on the EU AI Act, but we do see other legislation being approved, for example, like the Digital Services Act, that has kind of real impact on how tech companies, for example, like the social media companies, and how they will operate in Europe. So I want to bring, as I say, these different aspects together today and discuss, how we can design and develop, better AI systems using techniques from human-computer interaction. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is why we need this regulation. So where have the calls and the requirements for the regulation come from? What we've seen up until now is that technology and I suppose digital spaces in general for a very long time have been almost completely unregulated spaces. So where has the call for regulation come from? I'm going to briefly introduce the EU AI Act. I won't go through every annex in detail, but I'm going to talk about what it is, its purpose, its significance, the core principles, the key provisions, and the requirements. And you probably have heard terms like human-centric AI, transparency, and accountability. These are really key parts of the EU AI Act. There's also, of course, the impact on businesses. What are the impacts, for example, on compliance? What's the sort of impact on businesses, AI development, and then, more on terms of sort of, society. What are the sort of potential benefits of that for the consumers, but also what are the challenges in terms of compliance for companies? And then, how can human-computer interaction help here? How can human-computer interaction help us to develop human-centric AI that better conforms with the new regulations? So why do we need regulation for AI? So there's a very ubiquitous nature. It's becoming, growing importance, I suppose, of AI in modern society. There is, there has really, even in the last year or so, been sort of larger adoption of AI, and really every industry and every company now is trying to think about how it can adopt AI, and mostly these are around, gaining efficiencies, lowering costs, increasing revenues. That's, what a lot of businesses are focused on. And we're seeing it across the application domains. I've put some examples there from medicine, recruitment, entertainment, and things like judicial systems where there are these impacts, for example, on what we call fundamental rights, and I'll talk about those. I suppose from a business point of view, most people are talking about efficiency and productivity, sort of AI that can perform these repetitive and time-consuming tasks. Another big application we see across the domains I have there are the sort of predictive analytics. So how can AI help businesses make better decisions through predictive analytics by analyzing, you know, large amounts of data. So algorithms that identify patterns and trends, for example, that humans might miss. Personalized recommendations, really important use case of AI, and we're seeing that a lot in e-commerce, digital marketing, entertainment, and you know, other applications like, for example, enhancing safety and security and things like that are across the web. So it has the potential, it really does have the potential, I think, to transform various fields and to really, you know, impact digital transformation in several industries. But we also know, of course, that deploying AI systems, it's not without risk. And without properly framed AI regulations, AI can give you, you know, biased answers, it can spread misinformation, potentially have a pretty destabilizing effect by deciding, you know, who gets access to a loan or who gets access to a job opportunity and so on. So there is a need for a legal framework to govern its development and its deployment. So what are, you know, before I suppose we get into the regulation, this is maybe extending why we need regulation. What are some of the known, let's say, AI issues? Well, you know, a very obvious one, and you know, one that's really in the spotlight is fairness. You know, so AI systems should treat all human beings equally, but for a very long time we've been developing AI systems that don't do that. AI systems that contain biases, and you know, that contain discriminatory practices. So if we want to create you know, fair AI systems, we have to eliminate bias and discrimination. And you know, how do we achieve that? That's through, generally, you know, through high quality training data. So, you know, so many of the data sets that are used for training data sets for AI systems, they're often not specifically created for that purpose. And when that happens, they can pass on quirks or biases from the data or the data collection and process. And another problem, of course, is that AI systems can magnify our human biases in data and then sort of implement them automatically. And we've seen many cases of, you know, both the poor training data set, for example, we've seen the case of the Amazon CV filtering system, that where the algorithm was trained, the data set that it was trained on contained many more male applicants than female applicants, reflecting, I suppose, the lack of diversity in the tech industry. And so the algorithm learned to discriminate against female candidates. So if a female, you know, if a CV had something like, I'm a member of a women's chess club, that CV was not being shortlisted, you know, due to that kind of imbalance in the training data. And we've seen other things like the Compass system, that was a judicial system in the US that was used to grant parole to prisoners. It contained human biases whereby, you know, Black prisoners were much less likely to be granted parole, and the AI system amplified those biases. So that's all. Those are all around the sort of, I suppose, the training data and the human oversight of those systems. Another issue we know, a known issue in AI is accountability. So, you know, who's accountable when something goes wrong? Who's accountable when an algorithm makes the wrong decision? And, you know, how do we ensure that doesn't happen in the first place? Lack of transparency, well-known issue, and transparency is a word that we see all over the EU AI Act, and that's the need, I suppose, to look under the hood and to understand how the model operates. So, you know, if you have an algorithm that's working in a banking system, it refuses a customer a loan, the customer would want to know on what basis was the loan refused. So under transparency is the degree to which the model or the algorithm or the decision-making process is understandable to the user. And, you know, many of the more, I suppose, complex AI systems are known to be very opaque. They're the so-called black box systems, and it's very difficult to understand their inner workings. Reliability, big issue. AI systems, they need to be reliable, right? When they're deployed in the real world, they need to act in a consistent and a reproducible manner. And how do we do that? We need to monitor them, I suppose, ongoing in the real world to ensure their reliability. Because we know they can learn new things once they're deployed on new data. We've heard, you know, security and privacy, obviously, you know, robust data governance practices are very important parts of AI systems, particularly when they're handling personal data and so on. With generative AI, we have seen issues like copyright and anthropomorphism come to the fore. Copyright is, we've seen how generative AI can violate copyright laws. when the AI has access to copyrighted works, and it's generating outputs that are substantially similar, let's say, to existing works. And we've sort of just seen essentially how some of these large language models and just sort of suck up the contents of the internet and reproduce it back to us. Anthropomorphism is the process of giving non-human objects or entities, giving them human-like characteristics. So in the case of AI, I suppose that's about making machines appear and respond like humans. And one of the concerns there is this sort of overestimating then the ability of the AI, leading to unrealistic expectations or potential disappointment when the AI doesn't act doesn't act as it's expected. And there's that sort of additional risk of that sort of false sense of empathy and connection between the users and the machines. Just came back from an industry conference last week, and all the talk was on trust gap, the sort of trust gap for AI, and sort of as brands increasingly adopt AI, what we're seeing is this kind of gap in trust with users of AI systems. It's actually kind of one of the things we hear more talk about, the regulation of AI, and it's leading in a way to trust falling in AI, because people are now kind of more aware of the issues around AI. But I think on industry, they talk about trust gaps. I think we, on the academic side, we should be talking, I think, about safety gaps, right? We know that there are sort of known issues, and there are safety issues as much as trust issues in AI systems. And then, I think it's not necessarily an AI issue here, but I think what we have really seen is the complete failure of regulators to get a grip on social media. And what we've seen with social media is that self-regulation just does not work. We've seen it in the US, leaders of the social media companies testifying before Congress. Unregulated social media platforms have been used to interfere in elections. They've published and amplified toxic and harmful materials. They've created misinformation. They're a real key tool in the culture wars. And companies like TikTok, for example, are now being accused of creating addictive algorithms aimed at young people. And AI will have bigger impact than social media in the coming decade. And I think the potential harms of generative AI, particularly in the hands of bad actors, are really quite alarming. So, it is time to understand, I suppose, the risks and the opportunities before these systems become more widely available. Because right now, prior to the introduction of regulation, companies can deploy AI systems in an almost unregulated market, and there's no way to scrutinize these systems. So I think we want to sort of learn from maybe call them the disasters of social media to see what we can, what can we learn from that and apply to AI. So the EU AI Act, so what is it? It was proposed by the European Commission as a regulatory framework that was aimed at governing AI within the European Union. And it really represents a significant step in addressing the ethical and the legal challenges associated with AI technologies. And it's probably, the biggest piece of legislation right now worldwide concerning the regulation of AI. Its official purpose is to ensure the proper functioning of the EU single market by setting consistent standards for AI systems across EU member states. It's essentially a product certification system for AI. So if you think of, the CE mark that we apply to products that are sold within the EU, what the EU AI Act is trying to do is trying to replicate this for AI-based products and services. And the primary objective of the EU AI Act is to strike this balance between, fostering innovation on the one hand, and then the protection of fundamental rights and safety on the other hand. And it is set to become the world's first comprehensive legal framework, on AI. It is potentially coming up against some issues at the moment. It's, there's some issues coming up around how to govern and how to regulate generative AI. I'll come to that in a few minutes. So these then are the key objectives of the Act. The EU, I think, is very keen to not to be seen to be inhibiting innovation, It's something that often I think is criticized for, why do we why don't we have the equivalent of kind of Silicon Valley, let's say, in Europe, and is it due to too much regulation and so on, and this kind of tension between regulation and innovation. So they're talking about upfront, they want to foster innovation and trying to strike that balance between promoting, technological advancement, but also safeguarding, fundamental rights. And an aim is to engender consumer trust in AI, so like that product certification system that I mentioned, and by, building trust by ensuring the transparency and the safety of AI systems. Ensuring that their systems are safe and accountable, that's a really key pillar of the EU AI Act. It recognises the potential impact of AI on individuals, on society, and particularly in those high-risk sectors like healthcare and transportation. So it wants to create a framework that prioritises safety and ethical considerations. It also wants to establish a competitive European AI ecosystem. So it wants to create sort of a predictable regulatory landscape, right? So that companies know what they need to do in order to deploy AI systems, and encourage the growth of, I suppose, AI-related industries. And there's a big emphasis on public trust and acceptance of AI systems. So again, I said there's this emphasis on transparency, not only to promote accountability, but also to empower individuals and consumers and citizens to make informed decisions about the use of AI in their daily lives. So consumers should know if they're interacting with an AI system, right? A bit like, I suppose, the cookies banner that we see, right? But, this idea of empowering citizens to make these decisions about AI in their life. And, that transparency as well to help, address issues of, for example, bias and discrimination through stringent data quality requirements. So it aims to build this foundation of fairness, equality, equity, and contribute to public trust in AI technologies overall. And the EU is very clear that it sees, building public trust in AI systems as a real driver of commercial adoption of AI systems. So the core principles of the Act are human-centric AI, how AI systems should be developed to benefit individuals and society at large, with human interests at the forefront. Transparency, to emphasize the importance of clear, understandable, explainable AI decision-making processes in order to build trust. And then accountability. So it discusses the responsibility of developers and in ensuring the responsible uses of AI systems and mitigating potential harms. So the Act itself, it introduces a risk-based classification of AI systems, and that involves categorizing them according to their potential harms, the potential likelihood of occurrence of those harms. And it ensures that higher risk AI applications, all of this, the real meat here than in what I have here as 0-3. This is where the compliance part comes in if you're in this kind of high risk category. And what it sees as high risk applications are those that impact, safety or fundamental rights, and they're the ones that are going to have to receive more thorough assessment and oversight. But just to go through the classification system, there's 4 main risk categories. One is sort of minimal risk, what we have there. And they're the kind of simple consumer applications, or what we call the non-critical use cases, and they'll be subject to very minimal regulatory requirements. So maybe things like chatbots, spam filters, entertainment-focused AI. There would be something like I mentioned, they're kind of like the cookies banner. If you're interacting with an AI-generated chatbot, it will have to tell you that you're interacting, with a chatbot. Then the second one is what we move then towards kind of more moderate. So kind of 1 and 2. Sorry, 1 are the minimal risks. 2 are the ones where you have this issues around transparency, and there will have to be some kind of something to tell you that you're interacting with a chatbot, or something like a deep fake, something like a watermarking system where if an image or something is AI generated, there will have to be a watermark attached to that to make it clear to the user that it was an AI generated image. Then we move into the high risk system, and these are the ones that are, that are used in areas like healthcare, transportation, law enforcement, and these face, more robust regulatory requirements. So the EU AI Act here, it mandates really stringent requirements for these applications. And that's things like, very detailed documentation on how these systems were developed, and how they will be used in the real world. Very strict quality standards on training data. Companies will have to open up their training data sets and show them to regulators. What are your human oversight mechanisms that you have in place? And what are the compliance that you have with specific ethical principles? And I think one of the things that's quite interesting here is this is going to pull in a lot of sectors. I think there's kind of a misunderstanding that the EU AI Act is just for tech companies. It's not. If you're a company that's using if you're a company that's in recruitment, or you're an education company, right? And you're processing data that has, this, as we say, kind of fundamental rights, right? So whether or not you're shortlisted for a job, whether or not, if you're a financial institution, and whether or not a customer gets a loan, you're getting pulled into this new sphere of regulatory requirements, very quickly. And it escalates quite quickly once you start to look at the annex to see the industries that are moving into these areas. And, then we have the sort of 04 there, that's unacceptable risk. These are, systems that are kind of beyond the pale as far as the EU are concerned. These are systems that, pose a clear threat to life or health or fundamental rights. And these are applications, for example, that, can manipulate human behavior, conduct mass surveillance, exploit vulnerable groups, some of the sort of, social scoring systems that we see in countries, facial recognition, some of these technologies will, are part of that category of the unacceptable risk. Now, we do see at the moment there is a sort of a debate going on in the EU where some, the EU Commission itself would prefer to outlaw and ban facial recognition technology. But some of the law enforcement agencies are saying, well, actually, this is very useful in solving certain types of criminality and so on. So that's an area that's up for discussion at the moment. So how does it work? Well, it's a self-assessment process, right? All AI developers undergo a kind of a conformity assessment to ensure compliance with the risk-based approach. So you decide where you are within these risks of 0, 1 up to 04. And this assessment is based on the use case, the intended use, and the impact then on individuals and society. So the AI developers undergo the conformity assessment by using the annexes that are part of the system, detailing the requirements, for example, high-risk systems. As it currently stands, member states in the EU are going to have to set up what they're called national competent authorities, and these are going to be government agencies that will be in charge of the oversight and the implementation, the enforcement of the regulation. And AI developers will have to report their conformity assessment to ensure compliance with the legislation. We would expect those risk assessment standards to look something like the ISO standards, that, the sort of technical documentation that goes along with those for doing the self-assessment. And anything that's a high-risk application, that will have to be registered with this competent authority. And each member state has committed to setting up these regulatory sandboxes to help companies get ready for the EU AI Act. One of the things that's very different between the EU legislation and the US legislation is the EU legislation mandates a need for continuous monitoring and assessment of AI systems as they're used in the real world, to detect emerging risks promptly. That's quite controversial, by some of the companies. And then, the regulatory measures, they're proportionate to the identified risk. So that's how it will sort of work, let's say, in practice. So I mentioned the sort of a conformity assessment and how you'll have to do that. There will be documentation to show how you meet these. The fines, the penalties and the fines are heavy. They're of the order of GDPR. And they're essentially, they're made to be taken notice of, right? They can be up to 40 million euro or 7% of annual turnover for a particular company. So before we get to the HCI part, what are the impact and the implications? I suppose the impact on business, there will be a cost of compliance. you know, particularly for high risk applications, I think it might pose challenges for businesses in terms of compliance costs and adapting their existing AI systems. And I think probably pulling in companies that aren't used to this level of conformance and compliance. You know, I think if you think of something like a pharma company or a medical device companies, they're quite used to this kind of level of compliance, and they'll probably have the teams in place and so on. But if you're looking at sort of smaller companies, you know, thinking about recruitment companies or SMEs, small to medium enterprises, you don't really have those kind of teams in places. So I think it's very important that those regulatory sandboxes get set up to help companies conform with the EU AI Act. And there will certainly have to be sort of changes, I suppose, to the AI development process. So it will be kind of an AI governance development process with risk management at the heart of it. So we'll see, I suppose, a difference in, you know, we might see a change in sort of software development around AI. What's the impact on consumers? Well, they should benefit from increased transparency, clear information, including the potential risks of AI system. And I think this is an opportunity for consumer empowerment of AI systems, you know, better safety for consumers in terms of AI systems. And one of the things I think is that we will definitely see this kind of international influence. You know, the EU regulation is likely to have global implications. It has a territorial jurisdiction, just like GDPR. So if you're a company that wants to sell your AI-based products or services within the EU, even if you're not an EU company, so you're an American multinational and you want to sell your AI-based products or services within the EU, you will have to conform to the EU AI Act. So the EU being the sort of, you know, the trade bloc that it is, this will have, you know, this will have ramifications, and, you know, I suppose will influence international standards and practices around AI in other parts of the world. So where is it now? It's entering what's called the trialogue process. It has hit the rails a little bit around generative AI and foundation models. Different countries kind of, there's different opinions about how foundation models for generative AI should be regulated. But the final text is expected to be adopted early next year. Then there'll be a transition phase and it will become law in 2025. So that's a little bit about the EU AI Act. And before I get to HCI, looking at these, I want to talk a little bit about these key requirements of trustworthy AI. Because I think that's where a lot of the intersection of AI and human-computer interaction research can sit. So the key requirements of trustworthy AI are, prior to developing the EU AI Act, the EU formed a high-level expert group on artificial intelligence, that was to advise the European Commission on its AI strategy. And these were what it came up with as the 7 key requirements of trustworthy AI. The first one is human agency and oversight. So, you know, AI systems should empower human beings, allowing them to make informed decisions and fostering their fundamental rights. So this is about proper oversight mechanisms that need to be ensured. So things like we hear about human in the loop, human on the loop, human in command kind of approaches to AI. And technical robustness and safety, that's really around, you know, AI systems. So they need to be resilient, they need to be secure, and there needs to be a fallback plan when something goes wrong, as well as being, you know, accurate, reliable, and reproducible. We've spoken already about privacy and data governance, you know, ensuring full respect for privacy and data protection, and having those kind of robust data governance mechanisms in place. Transparency, that's around, you know, your data, your system, the AI business model, all of that needs to be transparent. And traceability and audit mechanisms should be in place to achieve this. And, you know, we see more and more this idea of a right to explanation within AI systems, that decisions should be explained in a manner, you know, that's useful for the stakeholder involved. And humans need to be aware that they're interacting, for example, with an AI system. Issues around diversity, non-discrimination, and fairness. So, you know, bias should be avoided, as it can have multiple negative implications, the marginalization of vulnerable groups, you know, the exacerbation of prejudices and discrimination. And, you know, AI systems should foster diversity. They should be accessible to all, regardless of ability or disability. Then issues around societal and environmental well-being. This is really around, when we see a lot of talk about this, are your AI models, are they, how sustainable are they? How environmentally friendly are they? So, what are the sort of social and societal impact and the environmental impact of AI systems? And then accountability. So mechanisms should be in place to ensure the accountability, the responsibility of AI systems and their outcomes. And that links very much back to transparency, looking at the algorithms, the data, the design processes that play a key role, especially in these kind of critical applications. So given all of that, let's get to, I suppose, how, human-computer interaction, what I would call the sort of human experience of AI, and what is the role that human-computer interaction can play in shaping our experience of AI systems. And designing AI systems, with a focus on explainable user interfaces, user experience, and interaction design, for me, that's essential to create sort of positive and effective interactions between humans and AI systems. And it's not only, I think, understanding AI systems from a human perspective, that's imperative to ensure these technologies will serve the best interests of individuals and society. And it not only allows for the development of AI systems that I think are more technically robust, but they're also more intuitive, they're also more user-friendly, and they're also more empowering for the individual who understands that they're interacting with an AI system. And I think sort of beyond usability, beyond the ethical considerations, understanding AI from a human perspective, it really is crucial for navigating the social impact of these technologies. We sort of have to comprehend potential consequences of an AI system, let's say on employment, on privacy, and social dynamics, and the public. We need to inform the public about, I think, how to make informed decisions about AI. I really believe we need sort of a societal consent for AI. And this kind of human-centric approach, it fosters that kind of collaborative dialogue between technologists, between ethicists, social scientists, domain experts, and civic society. And that's around developing AI systems that align, with our human values and they contribute, let's say, positively to our human well-being. So I really believe that we do need to understand AI from a human perspective. And one of the ways we can do that is through human-computer interaction. So I have created this taxonomy for human-centered AI. These are some of the things that I think are really important. I think human-computer interaction design, focus on creating interactions that are intuitive, understandable, and aligned with our human needs and our human capabilities. Cognitive science, I think, is a really important part to play here, to understand and to replicate human intelligence. And that can inform the design of AI algorithms that better mimic, our cognitive processes. Visual AI, I think, is really important. What are the most effective ways for AI to translate its actions into something that the user understands? We talk about explainable AI a lot, but explainable AI is really aimed at developers of AI systems. It's not often aimed at, end users of AI systems. And if we do want to build trust in AI systems, as I say, trust gap, safety gap as well, AI systems need to be better able to explain what they're doing. Human algorithm decision-making, collaborative decision support systems, they're the sort of humans and AI working together to solve problems and solve tasks. Human agent interaction is kind of similar. But it's more around, I suppose, enabling users to communicate with AI, because there's going to be more of that, I think, in workplaces, for example, as humans and AI work together to solve tasks. I think we should also be doing a better job supporting data scientists who are interacting with AI tools. Visualizations, for example, that help data scientists to explore and to interpret complex data scientists, AI model outputs, and so on. And then something I'm very passionate about is this idea of public-facing AI. So solutions that are accessible, that can be, utilized by individuals, by communities, and the broader public, rather than just being limited to specific industries or closed environments. So I'm going to talk, I've got, I think, about 5 minutes left, so I'll fly through a few of these examples of what I mean, I think, by, so human-computer interaction design for AI. So this is the focus here is on creating, interfaces that are intuitive and that are user-friendly. Some of the things we could look at here are sense making, so tools and techniques to support users' ability to shape, I suppose, our external representation of knowledge. I really feel that we have still a very poor understanding of end users' mental models of AI systems. I think we understand, a user uses a kind of a linear piece of software like a spreadsheet. They put some information in, they kind of get some information out, and the user kind of understands what's going on there. I don't think we understand well users' mental models of AI systems. How users perceive what's going on within an AI system. I think we're going to see much more of humans and AI working together collaboratively to solve problems, particularly in workplaces. This idea of computer-supported cooperative work. And I think that's the biggest way our work will change, the sort of future of work when people talk about it. And I think these interfaces for human AI collaboration are really important. What are those going to look like, this kind of user experience of AI systems? I'm really interested in UX, user experience for AI, and one of the things I'm really passionate about is co-design and co-production. How do we, with end users, design AI systems that meet their needs, that meet their preferences, and also, consider diverse user needs and abilities in the design process. So to ensure that AI interfaces are accessible to individuals from different backgrounds and different levels of technical expertise, physical, cognitive abilities, and so on. And that, really feeds into this idea of, how do we develop effective human and in or on the loop where, there really is human agency, where, user empowerment and control, allowing users to have a sense of control over AI interactions. And this idea, clear communication from AI systems is really important. Interfaces that provide really clear, concise feedback, conveying status, communicating risks, for example, the uncertainties of the AI systems. That is a really important part of building, I think, AI literacy as well among our citizens. As I say, I think cognitive science is really important here, just to better understand and replicate, human intelligence. And that will allow us to design AI algorithms that better mimic our own cognitive processes. And better sort of allow machines, I suppose, to interpret and to respond to information in ways that align with human thoughts. And that again can make, I think, AI systems not only more intuitive but actually more accessible as well to a broader audience. And I think cognitive science really plays a critical role in terms of explainability and transparency. I think people from, XAI, cognitive scientists, and HCI, they really need to work together to develop these understandable and intelligible AI systems. And that kind of feeds into here what I'm going to say about sort of visual AI and explainability. The most effective way for an AI system to promote transparency is to provide, clear and understandable explanations of its decision-making process. So, what are the factors that influence its outputs? What are the sources of data that are used in the analysis? This kind of very detailed documentation that will enable users, to assess or to audit, I suppose, the kind of underlying algorithms. That's a really part of, transparent and accountable AI. And I think, I think most of, XAI is focused on data scientists, right? We need to think about the different users of AI systems, and how we should tailor those explanations to their needs, to their background knowledges. Technical users or experts, they need different types of explanations than end users of sort of consumer-focused AI. Sorry, just going to turn my phone. Consumer AI applications, and the explanations, they should be, intuitive, and they should focus on also sort of the outcomes of the AI system, while sort of avoiding some of the complex kind of technical jargon. I really think here, we're so focused in AI systems and how we evaluate them on metrics like accuracy, right? I think we need a whole level of new metrics for evaluating AI systems. So not just accuracy, but things like, the explanation capabilities of the AI system, the intelligibility, the user understanding of the explanations, the trust, the safety. We need, new measures to evaluate AI systems. And I think evaluating AI systems should be we should be looking at how these measures trade off against each other, explanation versus explainability and so on. I think that's going to be, a really important part. And also I think these kind of explanations could be very important for regulatory compliance. So checking how an AI system adheres to transparency or explainability, regulation and standards. In terms of human algorithm decision making, I think some of the things we could be looking at in the not too distant future is kind of collaborative decision support systems. So, the interaction between humans and algorithms, we sort of leveraging the strengths of both human intuition and algorithmic efficiency for effective decision making. What would that look like? Interactive visualizations, helping users explore and understand algorithmic results more intuitively. Context-aware interfaces, I think, are really important. Interfaces that adapt to different situations, and sort of high risk, low risk, the technical proficiency of the user. Those kind of things I think are really important. When we have more, we're going to have some kind of democratization of AI, and we've got more people interacting with it. And I think, ethical considerations, that's where it comes very much into human algorithm decision making. These ethical concerns around bias, fairness, ensuring that the algorithmic decision making aligns with these ethical standards and respects user values. I think we also might move from what we see as kind of interfaces to much more these kind of decision making spaces, right? Which would enable sort of, this sort of data driven decision making. And how do they change how does that look different to the interfaces that we currently have? Human agent interactions, we've seen systems like ChatGPT, they're making huge leaps, but we need to think about, is this the right way for end users to interact with these kind of systems? We want to look at interfaces that support, natural language interaction, and to enable users to communicate with agents using kind of everyday language. And that's around, I suppose, enhancing the naturalness of the interactions and making it more accessible to a broader audience. But we again have to we have to be careful here. There are these ethical issues around anthropomorphism and sort of fooling the users into thinking that an AI system is real. One of the things AI systems are quite bad at are these kind of social cues, right? And I think there's a lot of work to be done on the human-computer interaction side of things there around integrating social cues and features into agent interfaces to make these interactions, more relatable and more engaging. And that sort of human-like gestures, I suppose, facial expressions, vocal intonations to enhance the user experience. And then, this sort of adaptation and personalization, designing interfaces that allow agents to change their preferences over time. I don't have too many more slides left. Go down, I'm kind of running out of time. I think we need to better support data scientists interacting with AI tools, better visualizations to help them actually understand the risks and the safety risks of AI systems, to explore complex data sets, to explore these AI model outputs, to facilitate better decision making, I think, on the part of explanation, on the part of data scientists. I think prioritizing the explainability of AI models over maybe things like accuracy, to provide transparency into the decision making. And it also helps, data scientists to interpret and understand the logic behind AI recommendations. And I think HCI designs for data scientists that highlight these ethical considerations, where the biases might come from, where the fairness issues might be. So I think AI tools can then better support data scientists in developing models. And then, finally, I think public-facing AI is a really important part, and that human-computer interaction specialists have a real role to play here. And these are, you know, applications or technologies that are designed for interaction with the general public. So solutions that, you know, can be utilized by individuals, communities, the broader public, rather than just being limited to specific industries or closed environments. And I think they play a really crucial role in sort of demystifying AI technologies, you know, for the general public. Can also address misconceptions or conceptions and just generally foster a better understanding of the potential benefits, but also the challenges that are associated with AI. And we need events, I think, to encourage dialogue between the public, between academia, between industry, between the regulators, so we can just make better decisions as a civic population, you know, around AI, and understand, for example, why the regulation is required. And I think this can help raise levels of AI literacy, which are really, really poor among the general public. And so I think I have some, you know, things here about how you might do that. Some things could be things around, for example, community workshops, public art installations, you know, public demonstrators for AI. And again, as I say, help users kind of make these more informed decisions about AI. So that's all I have to say. Just as I say, my conclusions of HCI4AI are really around, you know, trying to create AI systems that result in interactions that are more intuitive and align with, I think, our human values for technology. I think we need this focus on transparency and explainability, and I think that's a really important part of HCI user going forward, not just to enhance user trust in AI systems, but also as a mechanism of communicating the potential risks of AI systems. I think the more we work with end users, the more we can ensure AI is accessible to a wider range of users, and that we're being more inclusive. And I think, you know, we should be part, as researchers and HCI researchers, we should be part of contributing to user education and empowerment about AI systems. I think we need to look at the ethical consideration. That's a key benefit of incorporating HCI into AI research, you know, and ensuring AI systems are developed in an ethically responsible manner. And I think overall, you know, well-designed AI systems will actually result in much more positive user experiences, and ultimately, you know, will make users much more likely to embrace AI systems, and probably, you know, and lead to, let's say, better adoption of AI systems overall. So I will leave it there, Gordana.
Thanks a lot, Dympna, for this really exciting and very up-to-date, how to say it in English, very actual, true problem that we are facing today. And exactly today we had the workshop at the conference, which is HCI4AI High Conference, and it is Human Agent Interaction Conference.
Fantastic.
And the workshop was AI for people. And we had many researchers from HI who addressed different ways of seeing AI as interaction design problem. And it is really obvious that interaction design has human-computer interaction has very crucial position in this development. As you say, also education. We were thinking about ethics education, and now it's AI education broadly in the society. How do you comment on those?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we've spoken for a long time about this idea of digital literacy, you know, and that we have sort of a digital divide, and, you know, more fluent users of digital technologies than others. But I think we're seeing an emerging problem around AI literacy, right? I think the levels of AI literacy in the general population are really, really poor, you know, and we're not educating our public about AI. And even if you think, you know, if you think about GDPR, you know, if you've got a problem, like there was a breach of your data, you know, there's a process there. There's somebody who you can complain to. You can go to the Data Protection Commissioner. There's a process. There's nothing like that for AI, right? And I think also because levels of literacy are so low, AI literacy, people don't even know how to articulate a complaint, what a breach is. They don't know that. So I think this idea of AI literacy is really important. And, how do we sort of bring more voices to the table? And, I think that should be a big part of the legislation as well.
Yeah, I agree totally. Do we have some more questions or comments? Possibly.
I think we might have hit 5 o'clock. I might have spoken for a little bit too long. But
Yes, there is a question. Nazmun has a question,
Hi,
please.
Dympna. Thank you for the lovely presentation. It was great to hear about uh, your point of view and your work and perception about the whole thing and the intersection. And as Gordon is saying, it's very relevant and very important. So I found it very interesting the way you described. But I have one question, or rather, I am wondering about one thing, and I would like to know your perspective about this. So, like you said, that there should be other evaluation metrics besides just accuracy, right? I agree on that as well, like explainability, transparency, and trust, and like versus like what is the explainability rate versus the accuracy rate, or something like that. But as you know, these factors are all interconnected, right? So if one increases, sometimes the other one decreases. And then researchers are saying that, yeah, we need to have balance. Everyone is talking about balance. But what is that actual balance, and how can we achieve that balance that both are satisfactory, both are giving satisfactory results, and we can actually use that AI system? So who will detect that? What is that actual balance?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a great question. And I don't think there's a one size fits all solution to that. I think, it depends on, for example, the context of use. Is this a high risk situation? So what do you prioritize in a high risk situation? Is it accuracy or is it explainability, right? Who's your end user, right? What is the likely impact of the solution on the end user? Right. I think there's a lot of factors there that need to come into play. I also think one of the things we really need to move away from talking about, explainability and things like that is there's a tendency now to use the most black box model, right? To use the most the powerful model, right, which are usually a black box. And we've just started doing that. Like, I see all my PhD students now, they all want to do deep learning. We don't have to use deep learning for everything, right? Why don't we start with the transparent models and kind of move our way up through the systems? So I think we sort of need a kind of a framework here around evaluation that includes things like, opening up your data set and how do you do that? How do you make that transparent? What are the types of models we should be looking at? We shouldn't always be just defaulting to a black box model. And then depending on things like the context of use, the risk, the end user, we have to have a more nuanced way of actually evaluating these systems, I think.
Yeah, greatly pointed out. Thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you, Nazmin. Thank you. It's lovely to meet you as well.
Thank you again, Dympna. I think we are a little bit over time, but it was almost perfect. And it was such a great talk and very, very important thing. So thank you. Thank you.
No, I was delighted to do it. Thank you very much, Gordana. Thanks, Kit.
Thank
Nice
you.
to meet you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.